My guests have spent almost 2 decades advocating for a child they sometimes struggle to recognize. They are the parents of Greg Marquis, who suffered his first psychological break at age 21 and remains disabled by schizophrenia. Here to tell us about their experience and advocacy are Richard and Kathleen Marquis. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Rick, some people may recognize your names simply because of the frequency that you write editorials to the Florida Times Union. You've written, I think you said 58 editorials for the Times Union and a total of 87 as of last week
That's
in
correct.
papers elsewhere. What keeps you at it?
Uh, every time we help our son, and we are capable of helping our son, uh, my wife looks at me and says, "What about the people that don't have parents that can do it?" And I'll give you a good example. When he was in Chattahoochee State Mental Hospital, they asked how many people were there. They said over 900. And I noticed we were visiting every week, but nobody else was getting visitors. So I said, "Do they ever get visitors?" They said 95% of the people in there had been there for years and had never had a visitor. And the parents can't, we can do it, so we do it. But she does better than I do, and I rely on her. She's fantastic right arm.
Kathy, this has been obviously an incredibly difficult experience for your family. Greg is your only son.
Correct.
Um, and it has been a long time of advocacy for better mental health resources. How do you stay in, a posture where you're willing to continue?
Um, a, a lot of it has to do with mm, placing it in God's hands and prayer and other people praying as well. Also, we find that the reason why we think and we don't have, of course, don't know that this happened to our family is because that way we can help others who have these same types of issues. And we try to remember our son the way he was, not the way he is really right now, because he was an Eagle Scout. He um, learned sign language. He was a counselor for a young child with ADHD. He was in drama all 4 years of high school. So, in other words, there was the before Greg, who was very active in athletics and sports and so on, and then there's the Greg today. So, we try to remember some of the very special things, and we also find that other people who have sons and or daughters the same age are the same. They try to remember the other person. It's like they're two different people in a way.
And you, I know, in addition to those other accomplishments, I mean, Greg was in college when this happened. He was on a very significant scholarship. He was an accomplished, student. He was a very capable kid, volunteer, as you
Yeah.
say. Um, Rick, tell us a little bit about your family because I know that one of your messages is, if this could happen to you, this could happen to anyone.
Mm.
Absolutely. It's yeah, I'm sorry. We every time I talk to somebody, anybody, about what we're going through with our son, inevitably they go back and say, "Well, my daughter," but we haven't ever talked about her, or my son, or nephew. Every family seems to be touched because 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people is going to need mental health therapy in their lifetime. And as for schizophrenia, 1 in 100 people is schizophrenic. And I do want to point out, they did a screening after his first Baker Act, and all subsequent Baker Acts, drugs were never there. So he did not do this to himself. It's just, it hit him. Our number came up.
And it really came out of the blue. Describe to us what happened on that day when, Greg, I guess, was just driving really on the highway when this sort of manifested. Can you tell us what happened on that day?
Yeah, this nightmare started with a phone call at 3:15 a.m. From a I always refer to as a Good Samaritan. She saw Greg and was talking to him at a rest stop on I-95. Greg was trying to find his way home, but he was lost, so he pulled into the rest stop. When she put him on the phone with me, he said he was bleeding from his eyes, ears, and nose, which he wasn't, and that all the truckers were throwing boxes off the back of their truck in front of his car trying to run him off the road. So, yeah. So he said I was constantly having to weave to keep from getting hit by these boxes. This sort of thing's very common when they have their first psychotic episode. I mean, it's a scary, dangerous thing.
And so he thought he was being targeted. He, really did have these classic signs of a schizophrenic break, and he was diagnosed after that, in addition to another um, diagnosis that came at the same time that in some ways complicated his condition,
Asperger's syndrome.
Asperger's. And
Yes,
so,
that came to the forefront when he went psychotic. So, yeah, he has dual condition.
yeah. And this, as you've said in your letters to the editor, really was a shock for you. Have, you spent most of your early career in the military. You then worked many years as flying planes for FedEx and
Correct.
also managing. You were a teacher for
Correct.
decades, including
Um,
at the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind.
right, in the blind department. One of the things I would like to bring up is the stigma that's been attached because initially we didn't tell a lot of people what was going on. And as we came to find out, people that we knew, we had no idea that they had someone in their family. For example, where we live now, our next door neighbor's sister has it. Down the street, our neighbor, their son has it. One block over, another woman's son has it. And when they all find out that there's someone else involved that they can talk to about it, it gives them some comfort to be able to say, I have this going on. What are you doing about it? How are you handling it? Things like that.
What do you think people don't understand about having a child with schizophrenia?
Can I have that one?
Yes, you may.
I've heard it said that mental illness comes from bad parents. So my response to those people is, do you also think Alzheimer's is caused by bad children? How can you ignore a brain disease, the most complicated organ of the body, but accept heart, liver, kidney disease? I mean, it's just, and yeah, we've been shunned for years. It's rough, but that's why we stand up to it. I'll give you a good example. What she does to get me to stand up to it. When I'm looking down, she knows I'm getting depressed. She said, "No time for self pity. Go write another article, or better yet, go harass a politician." So that's what I've written more politicians than I've written editorials. But
I think, in addition, sorry for
yeah, sure,
interrupting,
go
but
ahead.
in addition, we also find that there are no facilities for people like our son that are not substandard. Um, the hospitals, the one that he was in McClenny, which is now called Northeast State Hospital, it's in very pitiful shape. Um, they need to do so much that we need lots of money coming in from the state to support these hospitals and the staff because they don't get paid very much. It's like you don't have them stay a long time in one job. They move on to something more secure.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Richard and Kathleen Marquis. We are talking about their son who has schizophrenia. If you have questions or comments, you can join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I want to ask you, she's talking about hospital staff turnover, but certainly the turnover that your son as a patient experienced has been really, I think, nothing short of astonishing. He would go in and receive treatment and become stabilized and then be released. Can you explain that pattern and why that was so difficult for you as a
It's
father?
it's called revolving door, where they just keep going back to the hospital. They bring them in. They're limited to 72 hours. They've got to release them within 72 hours or get a judge to declare that they're a danger to themselves or others. So we were trying to keep him in because the meds weren't working right. They'd kept increasing him, but it just wasn't working. And but But my question to them was, if I had a heart condition and I came to the hospital, I could stay here 30 days if I needed it. Why is mental illness different? Why do they have to come out in 72 hours? And they made us take him one time, and I came and picked him up, and I said, "He's not stable." On the drive home, he was screaming at me. He was just agitated, constant body motion. Uh, it just was awful, and I really was wondering if we were gonna get home okay, 'cause, yeah, he has taken me on one time.
And so you knew he wasn't stable, you could make that case, but it wasn't enough to get him in a permanent treatment facility. Is that just because Florida doesn't have the space to
Yes, as far as I can, they don't have the funding, they don't have the space, and Northeast Florida is kind of in a hard spot because, they don't have the doctors, there just aren't that many people that go into this field in Northeast Florida. So, that yeah, that makes see, our son right now, we had to put him in an assisted living facility in Tampa. That's the closest one we could get that we thought would work. So it's just brutal, and always worrying about if he has to move, where is he going next? That sort of thing's always on our mind.
or whether he'll have a place to go. I mean, the possibility that he could end up, you know, homeless like a lot of people do is a real possibility. It is required a great deal of your personal resources to keep him in a safe place.
Yeah, and of course, we're always looking to the end. We've set up trust funds and things for him, but it's the day-to-day thing. Where he is now, what made the difference for him is he has 3 friends there that are ballpark his age that have the same problem. So they're all 3 buddies, and they do video games and do stuff together. He hasn't the isolation he has experienced has been staggering. I mean, he's had friends he hadn't seen in years now. Everybody they don't know how to deal with it, so they don't. It's tough.
Kathy, tell me a little bit more about, how this has been for you, as a family financially.
I can't say that for us, particularly financially, it's been as difficult as we know it has been for other people that have no pensions. Um,
You have resources enough to bear it, but it is not by any chance, how you envisioned your golden years.
No.
Not at all. And I think that one of the things for me is, and probably for a lot of others too, is remaining patient with your loved one with a mental health issue. Because they say things, and sometimes you wonder where in the world did that come from. But then, if the medications aren't correct, sometimes they still do hear voices that are saying things to them that we don't know what's going on.
I've heard him calling "shut up." I thought he was talking to me. I said, I'm not saying anything." He said, "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the voices." And what he explained to me, the voices will say things to him like, "You're no good. You have no future. You might as well end your life." And it gets scary with that. But when he says "shut up" to the voices, they'll shut up. But if he's not medicated, the voices will not shut up. And then that's when it gets dangerous because they don't know what the voices are telling them. In fact, I made that point with the St. John's Sheriff's Department. I gave the opening lecture on what it's like to deal with our son, and I just said, "Don't get too close to him, and keep in mind that you're not the only ones talking to him. The voices are talking to him, and you don't know what the voices are saying. And if the voices say they're going to try to kill you, charge the police, he'll do it if he's that bad, and he's been that bad."
Yeah, he's broken a lot of items when he's been in one of these situations, like throwing them on the floor, throwing them out the window, things like that. But that's, I think, not uncommon for people that have this particular diagnosis.
And as you say, I mean, sometimes the possibility that they're threatening suicide, or that they're urging him to that has been a real fear as well.
Oh yeah, he's charged the police twice, asking them to shoot him, and on the last one they had to drop him with a taser. So that's when they use a taser, the next choice is their service weapon. So that was very dangerous, scary, scary stuff.
And so I know that sometimes the op-eds that you write come, they show a photograph of Greg as a young boy with a little puppy,
Mhm.
and you have a couple of other photos, very few. Can you explain why you don't have more photos of your son?
Yeah. Like I said, this is gonna be rough, this show, but these are the questions that need to be asked. We went out to get away for a while. He was at home alone, and, the voices were coming from behind the family pictures, and the voices were saying, "I can see you through the eyes of the picture." So he took the frame apart and took a penknife and cut the eyes out of all the pictures, so we don't have that many pictures left, so that's why we had to go with the young ones. I mean, that it's yeah, but, if you think that's bad, I talked to somebody that he said, "Oh, I can top that." Our son, when we weren't there, was hearing voices behind the sheetrock in the walls, so he started kicking in sheetrock, and he kicked in almost the entire house. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. But, the problem is, and a lot of parents can't accept it, you gotta hang on to the fact it's not who they are. This is not them. I mean, everybody I've heard discuss it says when the onset, it's like a flip of a switch. One day you know your son, and the next day you don't. When we went to visit him in the hospital after that first Baker Act, I went in and talked to him. I came out and I said, "Kathy, I don't know who he is. This is not our son. This is very scary." And we were almost hoping it'd be drugs because then we could fight the problem. But schizophrenia, there's no cure for schizophrenia. You treat the symptoms, but you're not going to cure it, not yet.
Kathy, this is obviously difficult for families when something like this happens. A lot of couples aren't able to withstand it, and a lot of families fall apart, people get divorced. How are you able to, withstand that pressure? How do you work against that, just kind of the divisive aspects of dealing with someone in your life who's so damaged in some ways?
Well, one of the things I do is a lot of volunteer work, and I try to keep my mind going in a positive direction. And we are in a couple of organizations, and one being Patients Not Prisoners, which is an organization that is really very, very important. It's a nonprofit, it's new to the area. We're trying to make life more bearable for the families as well as mm, the the loved ones who are having those issues. So I guess that plus being married to a man who's always been very supportive of me and everything I've done in the classroom, and um, I've tried to be supportive of him as well. And having a good marriage and communicating. I think the communicating is very, very, very important.
46 years she's been putting up with me. When you have a third grade school marm marry a Navy carrier pilot, there's going to be some bumping and grinding, but those were great years. Uh, we've had good lives together, and it's just this is the end, and we just have to carry the torch as long as we can.
Honestly, our son got his degree in hospitality and tourism, and he has been himself all over the world. He was an exchange in France. He went with his college um, group to Europe, and with us, he's been to mm, England, Scotland, Wales, many, many countries. And to me, history comes alive by seeing it, not reading it in the books. And so he has had lots and lots of experiences like that. Sometimes I wonder how much of those memories he still has
Mm.
from the past, because I know he had some really good experiences growing up.
What is it you hope most that your advocacy could affect in terms of change?
The biggest problem, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness supports this, the biggest problem is stigma. It truly is because people are afraid to ask for help because they're embarrassed by it. My son, I took notes from him, and he was talking about the life of a schizophrenic in one of the op-eds, and he was just talking about people just or afraid of him, back away from him, and he just feels like there's no connection. Well, NAMI says we've got to educate people rather than have them uh, just believe whatever they want to believe. It's so that's what we're trying to do.
And we are now, for people on the live stream, seeing the very few photos that you do have of your son, including that one of him as a young boy. Um, you know,
Shiloh the dog.
oh, Shiloh the dog, yeah, and a handsome high school picture there. Um, I just want to ask you in the few minutes that we have left, Mark. I know that you talk about the fact that you've been doing this advocacy for so long, and you won't be here forever. Um, What do you think about in terms of what happens to Greg years down the line?
I've written about this more than once. I refer to it as the parent's ultimate dilemma. Uh, we we will be there for our son for the rest of our lives. We will not quit. We will not give up. This will be our swan song. But our fear is, and everybody we talk to in the same situation has the same fear, that who's going to be there for our children after we've passed on, because it isn't going to be the state of Florida. And I'm 78 years old. I'm flat running out of time to get him set up, and that weighs heavy on me. I've got to get him set up before I go. So we're getting down to the wire.
Statistically, in Florida, we are number 49 or 50 out of the states, 49 or 50, back and forth. So we're at the bottom of what we do for mental health in this state. Um, Not only for places for them to live, but for people to work with them. There's a shortage of everybody in the caregiving aspect of it.
And we should say, I mean, he does receive a disability check that goes in its entirety to the facility that he stays
Correct.
at, and you
Every
even
penny.
have to supplement even that
I have to supplement that.
because that's not enough. And obviously, you're in a fortunate position that you are able to supplement that,
Right.
but not everybody.
So we're hanging in there.
Now he does have a service dog, but his service dog is with us because the facilities so far have not had fences. So, and the hospital, he was able to see his dog one time. That was, we should have had a picture of that so that you could have seen how wonderful. And I will show it to you before we leave. But the smile on his face, seeing his dog.
Well, Richard and Kathleen Marquis, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks for your advocacy. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us. You're helping us get the word out, so I'm not screaming at the rain as much as I usually am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.